Thank you. Hi, Simon Lewis from Reuters. I just firstly wanted to come back to the issue of the World Central Kitchen workers, the 7 workers who were killed by an Israeli strike. I had the honor of actually knowing one of them, Zomi Frankom, and I can testify to her zest for life, kindness, and selflessness that we could see in the work that she was doing. This morning, I've seen an image of her Australian passport covered in blood. It's quite striking. Secretary Blinken, you've been warning for several months about the need for more humanitarian aid to get into Gaza. You recently talked about the near-famine conditions there. This is the reason why these World Central Kitchen workers were there. You've called for an investigation, but this isn't the first time that aid convoys have been hit. This isn't the first time that the Israelis have been taking action that's restricted aid, both going into the Gaza Strip and being distributed. So I really wanted to ask, are you going to do more if this continues? This has continued for months. Is there more than you can do than simply raise these issues with the Israelis? And if their investigation comes back with certain findings, is there some action that the United States, as the main backer of Israel, is going to take regarding that? And secondly, France has proposed a new UN Security Council resolution on Gaza that goes further than the one that the US abstained on last month, calls for decisive and irreversible measures taken by parties towards a two-state solution. Secretary Blinken, you've called for a pathway to a two-state solution, a Palestinian state. So will you support such a resolution? And to the Foreign Minister, regarding that resolution, are you assured of having US support for that? The US has used its veto several times since October to block resolutions on Gaza. So would you call on Secretary Blinken to not use the veto in this case? Thank you.
Simon, with regard to humanitarian assistance, going back to the very first trip that I made to Israel after October 7th, a few days later, in every trip subsequent to that, I and many others, starting with President Biden, have worked to impress upon Israel the moral, the strategic, the legal imperative of doing everything possible to provide humanitarian assistance to people who need it. And of course, we've seen Israel take important steps over the last 6 or so months, whether it was opening Kerem Shalom, whether it was actually starting by opening the Rafah crossing to begin to allow assistance in, Kerem Shalom, guaranteed fuel deliveries, flour through the Ashdod port, opening a new gate, 96 gate, just a couple of weeks ago. Now the maritime corridor that many of us are working to establish. They've taken steps, but it is, simply put, insufficient. It is not enough to meet the needs of the children, the women, the men in Gaza who remain caught in a horrific crossfire of Hamas's making. So in our conversations with the Israeli government, including just last week when the defense minister was in Washington, and just yesterday when we were on a video conference with Israeli counterparts, we impressed again upon them the imperative of now surging and sustaining assistance, and not only getting it into Gaza, but within Gaza, getting it to everyone who needs it, including in the north, where, as you know, the conditions are the most challenged, and where World Central Kitchen was laboring to get assistance to people. So we and many others, including France, are intensely focused on this, and we are looking very carefully to see that necessary steps are taken to ensure that the assistance needed gets in and gets to people who need it. This also involves issues like much better coordination on the ground. We'll see what the investigation of the incident with World Central Kitchen reveals. but coordination has been a perennial problem, deconfliction, as well as other challenges, destroyed roads, lack of trucks within Gaza, things of that nature that have to be remedied, as well as the access points into Gaza. Having said all of that, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals or get ahead of myself or get ahead of the administration. All I can tell you is this is an area of intense focus and absolute necessity. When it comes to the Security Council, France and the United States work very closely together as permanent members on pretty much every issue that comes before the Council, including this one, and I look forward in the days and weeks ahead to talking about the current effort, other efforts that may come forward. We share the same objectives. I think, based on my conversations with Stephane, I think we both agree that getting an immediate ceasefire to enable the release of hostages and the surging of humanitarian assistance would be the best next step that we could have to actually really change things on the ground. So we want to make sure that we're maximizing the efforts to do that. Negotiations with regard to a ceasefire and the hostages are ongoing. We also agree that we have to find a path to a durable, lasting peace for Palestinians and Israelis alike. And we both agree that ultimately that has to include the establishment of a Palestinian state with necessary security guarantees for Israel. So we're aligned on the fundamentals, and we'll be talking in the days and weeks ahead about any of the measures that are before the Council.
Oui, de notre côté, nous avons déjà
As far as we're concerned, we already a week ago commended the adoption of the resolution, and we, as a matter of fact, are calling on all parties to comply with its content. Otherwise, there is no international law anymore and no multilateral solution. France, like you said, is also working on an initiative at the Security Council, together with its partners, including the United States. We're working on the parameters of how to exit the crisis, including the political parameters. Of course, they're being discussed in different fora within a number of diplomatic circles. We're working on a two-state solution, all the different possibilities of what could lead to an end to this political crisis with a ceasefire and the arrival of humanitarian assistance, and a political architecture that would enable to have security on both sides. We also, together with the Secretary of State, talked about another point, and that was the purpose of my visit to Cairo on Saturday, where I met my Egyptian and Jordanian counterparts, and in Guyana as well. We talked about the parameters and how to exit this crisis, and we will continue to talk to all the members of the Security Council and more broadly to the countries of the region. And we have the intuition, the feeling that we can find a consensus as broad as possible for a sustainable way out of this crisis. And this will require the adoption of a new resolution. If there can be, or if there shall be another way, and there will be, but such is what this is what France